We interrupt our normal program. Normal broadcasting will now be discontinued for an indefinite period.
This station will continue to stay on the air throughout the alert period to bring you authentic information. Telephone service to your home may be cut off. If you can plug in your radio in the basement, take it with you. Use a portable radio set if you have one.
In this video, I wanted to share the JS8Call settings I'm currently using with my Xiegu X6100. Xiegu or Xiegu? I think it might be pronounced Xiegu. We'll go with that for this video. Anyway, the settings I'm going to show you are ones I've settled on after some trial and error for both the radio and JS8Call. And I think that depending on the firmware version you're running, it's possible you might end up with slightly different settings than what I'm going to show you, which is probably going to affect your overall experience setting up the rig for the first time. For example, before I got my hands on the 6100, I checked out a few videos to see how others were setting up their radios, and I came across a couple that made the out-of-the-box setup look pretty easy. And to be fair, it probably was pretty easy for them, and I think that one of the reasons may be due to whatever firmware versions that they were running. And in those videos, I didn't quite catch the firmware version. I don't know if they mentioned it, or perhaps maybe I just missed it. But for reference, I'm currently running version 1.18, and the machine that I'm using is a Microsoft Go 3, which is running Windows 11. In researching the available firmware versions for the 6100, some releases I noticed had bug fixes for issues like for Bluetooth, as well as fixes for the push-to-talk functionality. And once I got the radio, the first thing I chose to do was upgrade to the latest firmware version, hoping that I would benefit from the fixes from the previous firmware updates. Unfortunately, after upgrading, when I tried to get JS8Call working with the rig, the process wasn't as smooth as I had hoped. And I ran into issues with getting the rig control to enable the push-to-talk. And I also had some minor issues with figuring out the right audio settings on the radio in Windows 11. One of the issues I found with Xiegu products is sometimes the consumer ends up being the beta tester. So they'll release a radio like the 6100 with buggy firmware. Consumers will report those issues, then a new firmware version will be released, and this process will continue until most of the major bugs have been resolved. So if you purchase one of these radios, just be prepared for the possibility that you might have to suffer through some buggy firmware versions until you find a solution for any of the issues that you've encountered are released in the next update. I also have the predecessor to this radio, which is an X5105. And although I had success in getting that radio to work with JS8Call, my experience so far with the 6100 is it's a lot easier to work with than the X5105. For example, there's no need to use a data interface expansion card like the one that comes with the X5105 or a DigiRig. With the 6100, you plug the USB cable that comes with the radio into your machine. So it's got a USB-C end, which you'll plug into the dev port of the radio, and then the other end is a USB-A that plugs into your computer. No matter what settings I tried, I was not able to get the rig control to work with the push-to-talk, and again, I attribute that to the firmware version, so I ended up using another software application called FLRig as a workaround to interface between the radio and JS8Call. And FLRig is pretty easy to set up, and once I got it installed, I was able to control the 6100 through the JS8Call software. And so if you're watching this and you're running into similar issues that I'm describing, then give FLRig a try. I'll leave a link to download it in the description below. Before getting the radio connected with your machine, you'll want to download a driver for your USB cable. You'll want to go to the Radio Oddity website, and under the Support tab, click on the tab for Xiegu radios, and then select the X6100. A window will pop up, and if you scroll past the firmware updates, you're going to see a link titled Xiegu X6100 cable driver. And so you'll want to download and install the cable driver on your machine before you start using JS8. After you get the cable driver installed, then you're good to connect the USB into the dev port and then the USB-A side to your machine. Now I'll walk you through the settings on my Go 3 tablet, and I have FLRig open, and To configure FLRig, it's pretty easy. Just go to the Config tab, select Setup from the drop-down menu and Transceiver, and another window will open. So I've selected the X6100 from the drop-down menu, and then my COM port is COM port 8. And then in JS8Call, I'll walk you through what those settings are as well. So under behavior, I've got everything selected except for receiver off at startup, and then these two under remove call signs from call activity after, that's disabled, and then remove messages, that's disabled as well. Networking and auto reply, I've got allow heartbeat transmissions outside of heartbeat subchannel, so that's selected, and then the one below it is also checked, and then I've got turn auto reply on at startup. Under the radio tabs for the rig, I've got FLRig selected, and then for the rig options, I have cat control selected, data packet, and then split operation is set to none. For the audio on my input, I've got my USB audio microphone selected, and then the output is the USB audio speakers. Under reporting, I have enable spotting selected for both of these. My APRS server port is 14,580. I've got the API checked, and then all 4 of these boxes checked. Server ports for these are set at 2442. I think those were just by default, so I left those alone. And then under frequencies, save messages and notifications, I haven't changed anything. So far, this seems to be working with the way that I've got it set up with FLRig. And so I'll show you what the rig control looks like. So in JS8, if I want to go to 20 meters, I've got that selected. And if I go back to FLRig, you can see that it also changed it in FLRig. For the settings on the radio, I've got all of the noise filter settings set to off. And here's a snapshot of my general settings, which I'm currently messing around with and just trying to figure out what works best, but this is how I currently have it set up. And online I saw some recommendations about setting the AGC on the radio to off, and I found that AGC fast seems to work best for me with JS8Call. And one last thing as far as the Windows 11 sound settings are concerned, so if you go to Control Panel, Hardware and Sound, and then click on Sound, and go to Recording and Microphone, select Properties, you might see a tab called Custom, and there's an option to select or deselect AGC. Also online, when I was just looking up what other people were doing, one of the recommendations was to uncheck that and then go to Levels and adjust your microphone levels. That didn't work very well for me, so I've left this checked, and then I've adjusted my audio level to 72, and that seems to work well with what I've got going here. So anyway, that's all I've got for this video. Hopefully this was helpful to somebody out there, and thanks for watching.